as he possibly could. And when he arrived, he landed, he became the boy. He took the grain of sand out of his mouth and he dropped it in that crack. And as soon as he did, the 3 trolls shattered into thousands of pieces, and they were no more. And then the rock itself began to creak and groan and groan and creak and split and split and split open wider and wider and wider, and suddenly a golden palace began to grow out of that space between those rocks, up and up and up. And then the 3 princesses, the 3 sisters themselves, came walking out, while the boy, who was now a man, joined them. And they all walked back to the castle of the king, their father. And the king, when he saw his 3 daughters, he did rejoice. And he said to the young boy, who was now a young man, "You would make a fine husband for my daughter. So be it that you are married." For the daughter, the princess, she wanted to marry him too. And they were married the very next day. And they had the biggest party that you could ever imagine. And had you lived in those times, well, you would have been invited to the table to share in the party and the food and the wine and the ale. And they had a wonderful party. And the couple, well, they went to live in that golden palace. And they had many children and a good life. And of course, they lived happily ever after. Thank you. I'm just going to have a sip of water just to soothe my throat. Check on the time and think about what story to tell you. I think I'd like to tell you a real life story, actually, about the roots of my name, my surname, Ibbs, I-B-B-S. Ibbs is a very unusual surname indeed. And as children, when we grew up, we would ask our father where our name came from, and he didn't really know. He died when I was relatively young, but he didn't really know, and no one really knew in the family where the name really came from. So I did some family tree research many years ago in the mid-90s, and discovered family going way back. And the earliest relative I could find with my name, my surname, was a Faith Ibbs from 1599, registered in the church register, 1599, Faith Ibbs. And well, it was wonderful to discover. And a little bit after that, myself and my brother, we discovered a place called St. Hippolytus on the Bedfordshire-Hertfordshire border. And we somehow the name was linked to that in some way. I can't recall quite now, but we went along to have a look, and while we were bowled over by what we found, we found a street just alongside the village, kind of thing, just offset from the village slightly, and it was each house. There was 6 large houses, and each house was called St. Ibbs, and we realised that there was this place called St. Ibbs. Now, I'm aware that people took their names from local things years ago, and we wonder if Faith was probably a servant in one of the big houses and she took the name Ibbs as her surname. Who knows? Anyway, as I say, the family have lived the Bedfordshire-Hertfordshire wave over the 16th, 17th, 1800s, and we tracked a lot of that. And we discovered a family story that I want to share with you from my great grandfather, I believe it is. First thing you need to know actually about us Ibbs is we're very adaptable. We don't give up easily on things. We're very tenacious, very creative, make something out of nothing kind of thing, and we don't panic in a crisis. But anyway, I digress. Well, this great grandfather of mine, John Joseph, he had 8 children. I come from a family of 6 children, and he had 8 children. And it was one particularly harsh winter, so the story goes. Times were poor. They were just land workers. very poor time, and they ran out of food and money, and there was nothing, and they were struggling. And he was a very proud man, and he didn't want to go begging, and he wondered and wondered what to do. And he said, I've got to go and try and find something, my love, to his wife. And she said, John, whatever you do, don't come back without fish, fur, or fowl. You must bring something back for the children. I'll do my best, he said. And off he went. Well, he went to the local vicar. I'm not sure how much of a God-fearing man he was, but he went to the local vicar and knocked on the door, and the vicar came to the door. Hello, Mr. Ibbs, he said. And he explained his situation, and he said, I don't want charity from you, but do you have an idea of how I could find food for my family? I believe I have just the thing for you, said the vicar. And he invited him in, and he said, I have an old musket here. And he took the old musket down, and he said, I think you could shoot this and probably shoot yourself something. Just let me show you how it works. And he got some gunpowder, and he put some gunpowder in, and he got a little bit of wadding cloth, and he put that in, and he took the ramrod from underneath the barrel, and he rammed that in. And then he put his hand in his pocket to feel his balls, the lead balls that he had in his pocket. And he dropped them into the barrel, and he ramrodded it in, and he said to Mr. Ibbs, he said, whatever you do, make sure you take the ramrod out. Just put it back in its slot underneath the barrel, and come outside. And they went outside, and he fired it. He said, do you think you could do that? And John said, yeah, no problem at all. So he gave him the gun. And off John went. Well, he knew the area really well, and he walked for a mile or so out of the village, across the open land there. Came to a small wooded area, went through the wood. The other side of the wood was a medium-sized lake. And he thought, well, even in the middle of winter, when there's ice and snow, the middle of the lake never freezes over. There's bound to be a duck on there. Well, he looked across, and well, blow me down, there was several duck on there, and he thought, oh, I'm going to be lucky with this. He thought, this is good. As long as I keep my nerve, I'm going to be all right. Well, he got the gun, and he rested the butt on the floor, and he got hold of the barrel, and he thought, now what is it I do? Gunpowder, and he put some gunpowder in it, wadding, and he got a bit, and he just pulled a bit off his shirt, and he put that in, and he took the ramrod out, and he ramrodded it in, and he put his hand in his pocket to feel his balls, his lead balls, and he got them out, and he dropped them in, and got the ramrod, while the clitter and the clatter of metal on metal startled the ducks. And he could see the ducks startling. Well, he didn't have time to take the ramrod out, so he just put the gun up to his shoulder and fired it. Well, the kick on the gun, and he wasn't used to it, was so strong, it knocked him over straight on his bum. Well, blow me down, there was a hare underneath him, watching him. And he landed on that hare, broke the hare's neck. And he thought, well, what luck. He thought, well, there's one for the pot already. I'm sure I've got a duck too, he thought. So he got out onto the ice of the lake. It was quite thick on the edges, on the bank. And he began to gingerly walk out and walk across, carefully. And he got closer and closer to where the lake hadn't frozen over. And he could see he'd definitely got a duck. And as he got closer, he thought, oh, I've got more than one duck. Well, what had happened was the ramrod was still in there. He'd fired that out too. Well, the ramrod went across. 5 ducks took off at the same time, and it ping, 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 ping. It went through all 5 ducks, speared them all. And the weight of that on that ramrod took the ramrod down while there was only a trout swimming underneath, going past at that very exact moment, and it speared the trout too. Well, John couldn't believe his luck. He thought, what? 5 ducks and a trout, and I've got a hare back on the bank. This will keep us in food for a week, or possibly even 2, he thought. Oh, can't believe my luck. Well, he picked up the goodies and he turned to go, and the ice cracked, and in he splashed into the water, and he was bobbing around, and he thought, well, don't panic. And he bobbing around, while the ice was so thin around the edge, it was razor sharp, and as he bobbed around, it cut his head completely off. But he didn't panic. The head bobbed underneath the water, and he just put his hand underneath and felt for it, and he got hold of the hair of the head, and he pulled it out, and he put it back on his head, and he got it all in line, and he waited until the frost, because it was so cold, he waited until it froze his head back on his neck, and then he climbed out, and he picked up what he had to eat, his trout and his ducks. And he walked back to the bank and he picked up his hare and he went back home. Well, when he got back home, the door was bolted and he knocked on the door. And his wife goes, "Who's that?" He says, "Me, you silly bugger, let me in." And she unbolted the door, opened the door. "Have you got anything?" she said. "Oh, have I got anything? Look at this," he said. "I've got a hare, I've got 5 ducks, and I've got a trout." "Marvellous," she said. "Absolutely marvellous." She said, "Right, I'll get on with this right away." She said, "You're frizz through," she said. Get those clothes off." She said, "Get yourself in front of the fire and have a warm." So she went into the kitchen. He sorted himself out. The kids were all scrambling all over his armchair. They were pleased to see Dad back. And he said, "Go on, get off my chair, get off my chair." And he sat down, and there he is, freezing cold. And he began to warm himself by that lovely fire that he had. He stoked it up a little bit, and he had a lovely warm. And he could feel the chilblains on his fingers beginning to tingle as the warmth came back into his body. And he could feel his bones and his body beginning to warm through as, it was lovely in that fire. It was so warm and cozy, and it got warmer and warmer, and it melted the ice that secured his head, and his head fell off his shoulders, rolled down his lap and across the floor, while it picked up dog hairs, bits of dirt and grit, and heaven knows what else that was lying on that floor as it rolled across. But he didn't panic. He didn't panic. Really calmly, he said to his wife, "Wife, get some ice and a tea towel and just pop in here for a moment, would you please?" And she got tea towel and some ice, and she went. And she said, "What is it, my love?" And he said, "Well, my head's just over there." He said, "You wouldn't just pick it up, bring it over here, would you, my love?" "Of course," she said. And she picked up the head and gave him, and he picked the head up and he put it back on, and he got everything all in line. He said, "Right, just wrap the tablecloth with the ice around my neck for me, would you please, my love?" And she did. He said, do a tight knot, and she did. And he said, "Right." And he waited until it frizz it back on, which it did. Well, the meal that she served that evening, well, they hadn't eaten like that for weeks. They ate like kings. And they ate like kings for many days afterwards with all that wonderful food that they'd got. And more of that story, I don't know. And I've come to the end of my story set, and I won't bow as you clap because I'm afraid that my head might. Thank you. I just want to give a nod with that story because I heard Taffy Thomas tell that at Halsey Manor, and he said that I could have the story. I'm sure he gives most of his stories away, actually. He's a wonderful man, he's Taffy Thomas. And he said, "Sure, Shane, you can take that story." And I said, "It just fits perfect for my family. I'm sure there's some truth of my family in that story." And then about a year later, I was going through a Duncan Williamson book, and at the end there was a story. I can't remember what it was called now, but it was a version of Fish, Fur and Fowl. So I'm doubly delighted, really, that there's a story that could almost be my family. I got it from Taffy Thomas. I've reread Duncan Williamson's version of it. So for me, it's win-win-win, and it's a wonderful thing. I hope you've enjoyed my stories today. Don't forget, before I go, don't forget there is a virtual hat underneath. If you just scroll down slightly, there's a PayPal hat. If you would like to give a donation, it would be greatly appreciated. Or any of the other storytellers come to that. We've all lost our income, basically. So if you can afford something, lovely. If you can't, please just enjoy the story. Share one of those stories. If you can remember one, please go and share it with someone else. And keep tuning into the World Storytelling Cafe. What a wonderful creation between Mike Wood and John Rowe to create this World Storytelling Cafe, where there are tellers from all across the world coming together virtually, telling stories for the general public to just listen to and absorb, and to do what we did many moons ago. We did it for hundreds and thousands of years. We sat and we told each other stories, and it's something that's still alive, storytelling, and it's growing every year, and perhaps you can help grow this. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.